Doesn't tell me. Did anybody get a notification saying we're recording? No?
No. There we
Okay.
go.
Yes. Yeah, there we go.
Oh, there we go. You started recording. Good. Thank you. Thank you.
That's easier than pen and paper. It's just listening.
Absolutely. So Quentin, allow in. I'm not sure how to admit automatically. Manage permissions, maybe.
Does it not have a security setting that you can switch off the waiting?
Yeah, on Zoom, yes. On Teams, we normally, all my teams are normally with people who I'm in the same organization with, so it automatically allows it. But
right.
I did look at it on the device, on the thing, and it said, yeah, I'll allow them automatically. Anyway, I'll do that if anybody sees somebody needing to be admitted. Well, Quentin, welcome. So let's just maybe quickly introduce everybody for Mark. So he got a quick idea of who you guys are, and there might be some other people hopping on the call. As usual in Africa, some people arrive a bit late. Maybe let's just quickly, as I see people on the screen, guys, this is a sort of a 10-second who am I, not a 10-minute. Very quick. I'm going to start. Robert, I can see you. Just who are you? What do you do? Very quickly.
Hey, Mark, I think we've met on LinkedIn, so you know who I am.
Yep.
Lee?
Tragar Logistics, and I, just I'm an owner of the business, and just logistics. Yep.
Dean?
Hi, Mark. I run a team of alternative investment asset class consultants.
Okay.
Gary, the Bolt.
Yeah, can you hear me? Okay, I think I'm on. Yeah. Hi, Mark. My name's Gary Bolt. I run a company called Famous Digital Media. So we focus on paid campaigns for various some focused industries and creative content all online.
All right.
Gary's a man of many talents, done lots of things. Jeff, Mr. Africa Piri.
Thanks, Tony. Hi, Mark.
Hi.
Name is Jeff Piri. I'm with DHL. Very, very passionate about Africa, like Tony says. I'm dialing in from Ghana this afternoon.
Good stuff, Jeff.
Wow.
Jeff sort of heads up. He's a director of operations throughout Africa, Mark. So he's worked in 52 of the 54 countries of Africa. So he says he's passionate about Africa. Africa's passionate about him too. Vic.
Hi, Mark. I'm Vic, and I run a youth leadership skills development platform.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, value add. I'll connect you on that. Or Vic, you must connect with Mark on that. Vic is doing some really great stuff, and Vic, maybe you can have Mark pop on as a speaker. Jeff also runs a sort of a youth leadership development all the way up through Africa as well. He's also got his own program, and maybe that'll be good to connect there. I've got
It's a passion of mine, so I look forward to serving both of you gentlemen. So I mentor a lot of young people, and it would be a joy and an honor to come alongside you and see what we can do to replicate what we already know in the lives of some others. So be a joy.
Fantastic. Thanks, Mark.
Yep.
Jason, also known as Lisa Fraser. You're on mute.
I had to dial in on Jason's laptop. I was having major technical difficulty with my iPad and my laptop, so Jason just lent me his.
Okay, who are you? Very quickly, what do you do? Very quickly.
I'm Lisa Fraser. I had an event management business, still staying on the board just to grow in my business Accurate.
We have Ralph.
Hi, Mark. I'm Ralph Roloff, the CEO of Dovetail Business Solutions, and I aspire to be just like Jeff Piri one day.
Quentin.
Hi, Mark. I'm running a company called The Webpreneur. I help entrepreneurs move their businesses online, giving them tools and training to do so. And I also would like to be like Jeff.
Ooh, Jeff. Annaline. Hello, Annaline. You're on mute. If you can just introduce yourself quickly.
Hi, Mark. I'm Annaline. I'm working for Tragar Logistics. Yeah, I'm just interested in what you have to say.
All right.
Nice to see you. And who else have we got? Chase.
Hi, Mark. I'm Chase Bernick. I run an indoor soccer arena and bar and grill, basically a little entertainment destination.
That's cool.
Right. There we go. Right. Anybody else who arrives after this, they're not going to get to introduce. So I've already sent around information on Mark. Mark and I connected some years ago on Twitter. I used to be an avid follower of his tweets, and then I sort of got off Twitter, and then apparently Mark also got off Twitter, and then I connected him again on LinkedIn fairly recently. And I just absolutely, and I know you guys will as well, because I know your hearts, but I just absolutely resonated with what Mark had to say on some of his LinkedIn posts, his way of thinking, the way he talks is about business and faith and systems and putting it all together is just fantastic. So Mark and I had he was gracious enough to allow me to speak to him for an hour and a half, or he spoke to me. We shared with each other just around what are we doing and what's happening in life and where are we, and it's been a absolutely, in my opinion, God-ordained meeting. And Mark said he would give us some time. It's 8 o'clock in the morning, so hopefully you got a nice good cup of coffee there, Mark. And Mark run. There you go. Mark is, and I'll let him introduce himself. He can give us a quick rundown on it. But I know Mark is CEO of the largest perimeter security company in the States. Is that right, Mark? Yep. Right. And so Mark has been in business a long time, understands business, understands growth, probably more important, understand the dynamics behind that, the people, the systems, the different things you need to do, and said he'd come and share with us. And I said, well, whatever's on your heart, share. We can discuss, we can go through things. So Mark, it's an honor, it's a privilege to have you here today. We thank you very much for your time. And I'm just going to hand over to you and just let you run with whatever you want to do.
Well, guys, thank you for allowing me to be a guest this morning and to serve you guys. I spent time this week thinking about it, praying about it, and want to provide some value to you guys and truly pour into your lives. And I'm available at any point in time. Like I said, Jeff, I'll be more happy to help you on your front. And what little bit of insight, discernment, and wisdom that I've been blessed to receive, I'll be more happy to share that. So as Tony mentioned, I own several companies right now. I own a physical security perimeters company. We do engineering, construction, we do service. So what we do is we engineer and construct all of the perimeters around a facility that are designed to stop a terrorist attack, a vehicle traveling at whatever mile per hour, and stop that explosive device far enough away to save moms and dads and kids in school and that kind of stuff. So we do that. I own a little small manufacturing company. We manufacture some steel products. I do own a web-only business, Quentin, that's a company called My Bike Shop. And that sort of came out of my years as a long course triathlete, which I haven't done in 3 or 4 years, but did half and full Ironman distance races for years. And so I've sort of put that behind me so that I can serve those around me and spend time with my bride of 30, coming up on 33 years. So, and I have 2 sons. I have one that turns 28 on Saturday, tomorrow. And then I have a 22-year-old. So Tanner and Peyton are the joy of Brenda's in my life. And I spend most of my time these days. I've groomed some great leaders that run our businesses. Some of them are just really deep foundational men of faith. And so we view our business differently than a lot of business owners might. This is a vineyard, and we have a responsibility and a duty to tend that vineyard so that we can serve the world around us. So as Tony alluded to, that's sort of the baseline for how I think and what I do. And I am a systems thinker. I don't build systems, so I've got people that understand and really enjoy getting into the details of how to build a system. But I'm a more macro systems thinker. And so Tony asked me to spend some time with you guys this morning. I don't have an agenda. Tony, segue and juke and jive in whatever direction you want. But I think one of the important things, so I'll start here. The first thing that I would encourage you guys to think about is that the world we live in is a lattice work of systems. Everything is related, everything connects, every system impacts another system. And what you do from a business standpoint is no different than that. So there are three types of systems in the world. There's natural systems. So if you look outside and see trees and grass and birds and whatever, and waves and weather and sun coming up, there's those systems. And then there are man-made systems. So we were blessed with the ability to create things. So there are a lot of systems that we create that allow us to exert control over our environment. And then there's a set of spiritual systems, those three systems. And your life from the day you're born until the day you die is only comprised of three things. You either are operating within or are existing within or operating a system. You're either learning a system or you're creating a system. That's your life in a nutshell. So those three, that model of 3 and 3 sort of explains everything that our existence entails. And so the first thing that I would encourage you guys to think about is that as business owners, things are going wrong every day and things are cropping up and we're seeing things in our life that don't work. And we look at the news and we see pandemics and we see wars and we see all these things that have a tendency to paint for us a picture that the world is just not this perfect place. And what I would encourage you to understand is that your world, each of you on this call, your world is 99.9% perfect. And so you have to realize when you slow down and step outside of what you're doing and look around and realize that your world is pretty much perfect, okay? And that's a systems perspective, and that's the perspective from which I operate from. So as a business owner, I try to look at businesses from this systems perspective. And then what I do is I create, so if you think about it, each of you right now, you're in a context. That context is you're on a Teams call. I'm on the call. I'm speaking to you. Information is coming in to your ear. You're jotting some notes down. This is a context, okay? Contrary to popular belief, we as humans don't think. In other words, we're not thinking machines. What we are is we're pattern recognition machines. Okay, so when you're in a context with a relationship, your spouse, your partner, a business meeting, whatever the case is, you are interacting with your environment. We as humans are essentially taking information in from our environment, and then based on the patterns that we have in our mind, we are effectively then interpreting what we're seeing in that context. And so what we are is we're pattern recognition machines. Okay, not thinking machines. So if you've ever written, you know, this conversation started off with what's better, keyboards or paper. There's a concept in biology called stigmergy, and I'll get to some more business related stuff in a minute. But stigmergy, there was a guy from British Telecom, there was an entomologist and a physicist that went to the New Mexico Institute, which is a think tank, and they studied ants for years, okay? And by studying those ants, they were trying to understand how ants and wasps and termites self-organize. And what they found out was that all of those insects essentially were leaving an artifact in their environment, which they were then another agent or another ant was interacting with. So if you've ever seen a straight line of ants from your peanut butter and jelly sandwich or your lunch to the ant mound, it's because those ants are leaving what's called a pheromone trail or pheromone molecules that the next ant comes out of the mound, sees that, looks for the strongest one, and then follows that, okay? That straight line represents artifacts. It's a stigmergic or a stigmergy event. It's a mental model. When you jot a note, what you're doing is you're leaving an external artifact in your environment that you are placing outside of your brain so that when you go interact with it again, you go, oh yeah, I need to go pick up milk at the grocery store, okay? So your environment is essentially creating a second brain for you. And you can either by design or by default interact with that through things to do list or Evernote or whatever the case is. Your external environment is essentially acting as this trail that an ant follows that you're now interacting with. So we don't think, we look for patterns. That's what mental models are all about. And so as a businessman, what I do is I effectively try to, like Warren Buffett's partner, help me, Charlie Munger. Charlie Munger essentially said that, look, our role in life is to develop this lattice work of mental models. And so that's, by introduction, that's what I do. And that's how I think about business, okay? So as businessmen, and women, what I'll do is I'll share with you a couple of models that hopefully will help you a little bit. So remember, first of all, it's just a system, okay? And by design, these businesses, whether we're trying to train a leader or we're trying to handle logistics or we're trying to do digital marketing or we're trying to do whatever, those businesses are systems of systems that have a single intent, which is to create value for an outside constituent, somebody we call a customer. And we want to be able to deliver that value at a price that is at a cost that's lower than what they perceive the value to be, so that they buy it from us. And then that net margin allows us to have OPEX, CAPEX, and profit for a company. Make sense? So creating that value is really what we as business women and men are doing. We are operating within a man-made system called an economy, okay? We are creating values, of which there's 10 types of values. And our job is to figure out what those mental models and systems look like so that we can create those in such a way that we can serve somebody outside of our business at a cost structure that's much less than they're willing to pay us for it, because they perceive that it's worth more. They're making a trade-off decision. What you're offering me is of higher value than how I value the money that I'm willing to give to you. That's pretty much it, okay? And so the question of growth in your business, the question of how you make money, is really a function of all the mental models that essentially surround that component, of which there's multiple. So I'll share a couple with you. So as a business owner, and I shared a concept with Tony that I created called the CENTS model, CENTS. You may want to make a note of this. When I look at a business, so I think one of the people on here was looking at doing alternative investment stuff. That's great. When I look at a business opportunity, or I go counsel a business person, the first thing I do is I mentally go through this model real quickly called CENTS. So the first part is does this business, the first C is control. And that's not in a control freak kind of way, but it's, does this business, do you have something that you're doing that allows you to control your destiny as it relates to the creation of the value? So in other words, you need to own the systems or have invested in the systems in such a way that you are mitigating the risk associated with your value system being impacted from the outside. That's control. If you become an Amazon FBA seller, or if you're based on advertising dollars on Facebook, or if you're selling Google AdWords, you are essentially hitchhiking on somebody else's system. And if they make one shift in their algorithm, or they decide to do something different, or to ban you, you are in a position where you have lost control. And I know many, many people who have lost their entire businesses because of a shift in a Google algorithm. So the first thing we want to think about from a business standpoint is, what do I control? Do I control my future, my ability to feed my family, to essentially keep my employees employed and to serve them? What do I control? It doesn't, and if you don't control it, at least get rid of the cognitive biases that are, I'm a legend in my own mind and everything will work out great. Get rid of those biases and admit that you don't have control in certain areas, and then work diligently to essentially gain control. And so that brings in another mental model called inversion. Inversion is, we can do cumulative thinking or we can do inverted thinking. Most people pick a goal and they do cumulative thinking up to that goal. They go, well, I need to do this and this and this and this. Okay. The problem is that as humans, we believe that we can be much more successful than we can. And so one of the models that Charlie Munger talks about is inversion. Inversion is, you now, instead of having the goal of, I want to have the best, DHL logistics systems in Africa, you then set up you then do a mental exercise where you go, hey, what could I do to ensure that it's the absolute worst delivery system in the country? So take your business and say, and you have a goal, say, what could I do to make it the absolute worst I could do? That inversion thinking then allows you to, without biases, to essentially identify all of the things that could go wrong. And so the general tome of, Charlie Munger once said, all I want to know is where I'm going to die, so I'll never go there. That's inversion thinking, okay? So by doing inversion thinking, what it does is it teaches our brain not to try to be so smart, and in lieu of that, try to not be so stupid. So that's the value inversion thinking. That rides right alongside the C in sense, which is control. The second is entry. So Adam Smith, Wealth of Nations, we understand that if you have an ecological, I mean, if you have an economic mindset, there's competition and supply and demand and all of those kind of things. Now, I happen to lean towards an ecological mindset because of my bias towards scripture, that things are expansionary versus contractionary, but it's valuable in a business to think about the E part, which is entry. So C is control, E is entry. You have to create some barrier to entry to protect your asset. If you own a business, it's an asset. The business is not you. The business is an asset that is designed to essentially create benefit or value for you, which allows you to serve those around you, serve your community, put money in your bank account, pay your bills. That's the value, but you need to create a barrier to entry. Warren Buffett said, I look for businesses that have a moat. In other words, a moat around the castle. And he said, on second thought, I want a moat that's deep and has alligators and piranhas in it. Okay, that's barrier to entry. So it gets back to things like the Porter Five Forces model and Blue Ocean strategy and all of those strategic things that have those models that have been put together by some pretty bright people like Collins and Drucker. And you want some level of barrier to entry in that business. So if you're looking at an investment, the question is, do they own IP? Have they invested in process that only they have, that it would take a year or 2 years for a competitor to match that process? You want to be in such a place that you are not vulnerable to, for lack of a better word, an attack from going back to Clayton Christensen and all the Innovators Dilemma books, that somebody can nibble away at your edges. You want to be able to protect that. The third is need. And it's not just, is there a market need, but is the need of sufficient size? So Jeff, you essentially have a target market called Africa, okay? That's a big market. But if you are starting a business that is a karate dojo in downtown Joburg in a neighborhood, okay, and there's only 10, 15 people that essentially are interested in karate, that need is pretty small, which ties into the last two. So you want to look for an opportunity and at least be cognizant of the fact, am I fishing in my bathtub? Am I fishing in my neighborhood? Am I fishing in my town? Am I fishing in my state? Am I fishing in my nation? Or am I a global business? That's need. So you want to be able to evaluate that from that perspective. The third is time. If you were a business owner and if you were to get sick and not be in your business for the next 60 days. So Robert, could your business survive if you were gone for the next 60 days because you were sick? Okay. The things that I'm sharing with you are not intended by any stretch of the imagination to be an indictment or to be a negative towards what you're doing. So with that caveat, let me tell you that the principle of time is that if you can't leave your business and it survive, you have not built a company, you've built yourself a job. Okay? And if you've built yourself a job, then the job owns you, you don't own the asset. That's the principle of time. You need systems and people and forethought and discernment and wisdom to build something that will operate, an asset, a machine that will operate without you having to be there all the time. Because if you're trading your time for dollars, then you haven't built an asset that serves you. You serve it. That's the principle of time. The last one is scale, which gets back to this concept of need, which is if you control something, you've built barriers to entry. There's a need, which is the geography or the size of your potential market. You haven't built something that can operate without you. Then you get to this principle of scale, which is, it gets back to another mental model called entropy, which you may or may not have heard about, which all systems, all enclosed or isolated systems are in a constant state of decay. Right now, we've got cells dying, our hair is falling out. You know, some company in Africa is going out of business right now. You know, some employee in your company right now is making a mistake, period. That's entropy. At a macro level, we have a war in Ukraine, we have a pandemic, We have decays in society. This is why we have to fight for the systems that we believe in and constantly nurture and take care of them, because by definition, back to Newton's laws, these things are going to decay, and we have to be cognizant of that. Okay, so that's the, Tony, that's the sense model. So when I look at something, I'm mentally going through this list really quick. Is this something controllable? Is there a barrier to entry? How big is the need? Can this thing be built in such a way that I don't have to be doing it all the time? And can I scale this? You don't have to have all 5, but for you to have a successful business, you need 4 of the 5, simply put. And so by understanding this model, you can step back today and go, okay, Mark shared with me this model. It's pretty simple, CENTS. As I look at my business, you know, so Jeff, you're training leaders. You have a very large geographic footprint. Do you know what the #1 job of a leader is?
Yes, Mark, I'll hazard a guess, yeah?
What is it?
To inspire people.
Wrong. That's not the job, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way. Your #1 job as a leader is to put yourself out of the job.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? If you own a company, your job, if you're the president, your job is to put yourself out of a job as president and become the CEO. When you're a CEO, your job is to put yourself out of the job of being a CEO and become chairman of your board. At that point, you're then focusing no longer on your income statement, you're focusing on your balance sheet. You are now managing assets. The job of a leader is to train leaders. You with me? When Jesus took all of those 12 disciples and sent them out by 2 by 2, his job was to put himself out of a job. That's the job of a leader, okay? So as you look at this model, think about that, and this ties back to the principle of time. In other words, you need to build a functioning system that works, okay? So with that being said, let's get to back to the concept of growth for a minute. When we are growing, we are by design thinking of something which is an innovation. And Tony asked me if I would share a principle with you guys real quickly. It's a model that I created in my head. I just call it the clock model. And if you think of an XY axis, okay, go ahead, Tony.
Mark, just as you go into the clock model, just give that quick definition of wealth equals value times leverage, so that when you do the clock, you can tie the two together. Thanks, Mark.
So most people, because they have a consumer mindset. In other words, all of us were, from the day we were born, we were handed, I wasn't, but my kids were handed iPhones and laptops, and we had TV, and they're bombarded with messages. So most people think that wealth is financial. It's not. Wealth is anything that you value, an incremental unit of value that is important to you. It could be free time. It could be quality time with your family. It could be how many leaders, Jeff, you're raising up in Africa. That's wealth. Money is one of those components, okay? But anything that you value in your life represents wealth. So Gary, if you're working with people doing, you know, social media and digital marketing, understand that a lot of your clients are thinking that wealth is how many views did I get on Facebook. That vanity metric, they can view that as wealth, but it's a vanity metric. You and I both know that what we're really looking for are qualified leads that go into a funnel. It goes into that funnel. It goes through a process. How many qualified leads? What's my ROAS? What's my CPR? What's all? Those are metrics that we want to follow. That's wealth. Okay. So the formula for wealth is pretty simple. Wealth equals value times leverage. So whatever that unit of value is that you want, quality time, money, contacts on Facebook, whatever that is, that's value for you. And you can have lots of things that could be wealth. That value then is only grown through leverage. Okay? That's the universal formula. So if you can print that in your head, hey, I want to have wealth in this area of my life. This is what it represents. This is value. I have to create some type of leverage in order to do that. And there's so many mental models that we could use to talk about that, like the 80-20 rule and the principle of leverage. And You know, all of these different things that you want to focus on the 20% that drives 80%. That's, you want to be able to lever your value to increase your wealth. Okay. In a business, we have to understand that not everybody is created equal. Not everybody was given the gift to be an entrepreneur. Not everybody was given the gift to be a chief operations officer. I'm not a COO. When Tony and I spoke, he says, hey, it sounds like you're a guy that sits there and does systems. No, I've got people that do that stuff. That's not me. Okay. So we have to understand that we were given God-given gifts. Okay. There's a story in, I think, Exodus about Bezalel that was, you know, it says he was called before his birth to be the artisan that worked on the tabernacle. In other words, when you were born, you were given, and you know what it is. You thought about it when you were a kid. You have a certain leaning. You may have stepped out of that gifting, but we all have a different set of gifts. Okay. And so back to this clock model. What I did is I tried to take, if you've ever taken a personality test, and I've taken Strength Finders and a couple of others, you know, you answer a bunch of questions and there's like 52 things that you could sit there and be. You could be, you know, whatever. You could be a thinker or an input person, or it's so confusing that it's a problem. And the problem that I had with personality tests was that what it does, based on the theory of narrative identity, is you're looking at the world through your past experiences, your current perceptions, and you're answering these questions this way, and it's parroting back to you what you currently think. I think personality tests are a crock. So what I did is I tried to sit back and think, okay, well, if those in my mind are not accurate, what are generically the types of people that are engaged in creating value? This is important as you look at your team. Okay. At 12 o'clock on the clock, are your creative type people? In other words, if you woke up this morning and you had 5 ideas in the shower, you're that type of person. It's Richard Branson, Walt Disney, Thomas Edison, Mark Oakes, those types of people. These are your creatives. These are the ones that create an idea. Okay. Now let's jump down to 6 o'clock. 6 o'clock are your operations type people. Those operations type people can take an idea and then go execute on it. It's a timing component. So at 6 o'clock are people like George Soros, Warren Buffett. They're timing the market. It's your chief operations officer who's responsible from a logistics standpoint for making sure that you've got everything coming in, that you understand the routes, you've got the best drivers. You're then calculating how many stops you've got along the way. That's your operations person. They're taking an idea and bringing it into the world. So between 12 and 6, so if you're an entrepreneur and you're a creative type that you're thinking, oh, I got a new idea, you're in a 12 o'clock spot, the first person you should hire is a person that can take your idea and go do something with it. Because if you're a creative, what you typically find is that, and the problem with the creative is that when you have an idea, it's already fully formed in your mind, but it may take 12 to 14 months for it to happen. But you can't see, you're just completely immune to the 14 months worth of pain and effort that has to be executed in order for that idea to come into the world and into the marketplace. Make sense? At 3 o'clock are your people. That's not me. You take me to a conference, I'm in the back row in the back right-hand corner in the last chair. I don't spend a lot, not a good thing or a bad thing. When I have to be in front of people and give a speech, I'll do it and do a great job. But I would prefer to sit down and just think big thoughts. Okay. But at 3 o'clock are people like Oprah Winfrey. Jack Welch from GE was a people person. These are people that get things done through other people. I don't mean that in a derogatory way. It's just that they have a great way of encouraging and inciting and holding hands and figuring out what the best people are to put on the right problem. They are managing through people and building through people. That type of person like Oprah Winfrey, she's magnifying a brand. Okay. She didn't have a bunch of business. She's got Harpo Inc. or whatever the name of her company is. All she does is magnification. Jack Welch did this at General Electric. But on the other side of the clock at 9 o'clock is a person like Ray Kroc. Ray Kroc, whereas a 3 o'clock person is trying to get things done through people, the person at 9 o'clock is your systems builder, which is not who I am. Ray Kroc went out and bought the McDonald's brothers hamburger stand and then spent 5 years perfecting how to cook a French fry. Ray Kroc started McDonald's. So if you've ever read the E-Myth, you read the E-Myth and you go, oh, this is exciting. I need to go build systems. Well, here's the problem. If you go into the bookstore, if I recommend a book to you as a 12 o'clock person, so a book on Leonardo da Vinci or Ray Herson on how to think better, or how to, Franz Johansson on the Medici effect, like, this is the greatest book ever. But you're a 9 o'clock person, I'm giving you a tool that you're not equipped to use. This is the problem we run into, is that we throw people at problems, but they weren't gifted to use that set of tools to make things happen. So if you ever read E-Myth, you get all excited, you start working at it, and at a certain point you just throw up your hands and go, it doesn't work. No, it doesn't work because you weren't a 9 o'clock person. So the 9 o'clock person is trying to get things done through systems and get rid of the people. So you've got innovation people, creative, imaginative people at 12 o'clock, operations people at 6. You've got people at 3, and systems people at 9. That's sort of your clock. So let's take this back to your business for a second. Let's get back to the wealth creation formula. Wealth equals value times leverage. Okay? Value is an idea dynamic. In other words, we have an idea about how we want to create value in the marketplace. Okay? Somebody has to think the idea up, somebody has to execute on it and bring it into existence. That's on the vertical axis between 12 and 6 o'clock. That's how value is created. Okay? Between 3 and 9 o'clock is how value is leveraged through magnification or multiplication. Does that make sense? So if you think about a river, if you have a river near you and it's like a really narrow gorge, and when it rains, it's like floods. Here in the States, we have the Colorado River and there's Cat 5 rapids. That right there is that river analogy is, if you have a great idea, you got water just flowing through a really narrow area. But if you have a river in Africa like the, Mississippi River, there's trillions and trillions of gallons flowing very slowly by every second. Okay? That's leverage. That's a wide, wide river. So if you think about it, how creative you guys are relative to leveraging your gift to create an idea and then operate on the gift, that determines the slope of the fall of the river. Okay? That's innovation, that's value. But if you've ever gone out to a farm and there's like a spring in the farm and you see this little lazy meandering river or stream in the middle of the field where it's almost stagnant, that's value that doesn't have much staying power. In other words, you haven't created an idea that satisfies the control, entry, need, time, and scale thought process. That river is just going through a little field, okay? It's barely even moving. It's not even worth our time. But the more gradient you put on that idea, okay, and you have to test it. So Gary, when you're helping people with digital marketing, you're A/B testing, you're doing these things in fast succession, okay? The reason you're doing that is because we never really know until an idea meets the marketplace. This gets back to, if you've ever read the book, Lean Entrepreneur, or whatever the name of that book is, he's talking about going through really fast, getting these ideas so we can determine how steep that gradient is on the value component, okay? Once we get that idea, then we have to figure out how to either magnify it or multiply it so that we can create the leverage. Does this make sense? In our business, we have to then think about, and you can sort of, if you have discernment, you can sort of look at these people and go, look, I'm the CEO. Gary and Tony and I talked about this at length. We were sort of, I'm pretty clear on who I am and what I do. But we were Tony and I were talking, and Tony's sort of, you're not perfectly at 12, 3, 6, or 9. Tony's sort of, I think, between 9 and 12. Is that correct, Tony? Or maybe it's between 12 and 3. But we want to understand, okay, who we are, first of all, and how are we in the multiplication magnification business, which is leverage, or are we in the idea creation, idea operations business? That's our gift, which is the value. Once we understand that, we can then begin identifying the people in our organization that fit these other components. And then, as we talked about with Jeff, as leaders, we can then begin to essentially help them understand what their role is, make sure that we get them to understand how to execute on that role, and then be able to hand those things off and empower them to do what they're good at to essentially build the business. And if you do this at scale, you will satisfy the time piece. You'll build a machine, for lack of a better word, a system of systems that at some point you don't have to be in the business every single day. Okay? So Tony had asked me to share those couple of models. I can share a number of others. Tony, I think you asked me to talk a little bit about value, the types of value. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, guys, are there questions that you want to ask? Are you happy for Mark just to keep talking? I think I can see everyone sort of is very, very engaged. So what would you prefer? Are there questions about this, or do you want Mark to keep talking about? You're all being quiet.
Keep going.
Keep going. Those in favor of keep going, hands up.
And keep going. It's great information, Mark. I think
keep going. Yeah.
It's good to hear your perspective and things. So yeah, keep going.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about value for a minute. I put out a two-part. I'd gotten some questions from some of the guys that I mentor on what is value, how does it work. So I put out a two-part LinkedIn post, and I just treat LinkedIn as a way to get in there for 5 or 10 minutes, type something up real quick and send it out. So I did this thing on value, and there's 10 types of value. Now, most of us, okay, understand only 4 of those or 6 of those types of value. So on the economics or the economy side, there's 4 types of value, and they're split into 2 parts. The first are what are called retail values. Retail values are the money you spend goes out, but it doesn't come back to you, okay? And that's those 2 retail values. You spend money for things you need, like food and clothing and shelter and heat and cooling and that kind of stuff. And then there's money you spend for things you want. This is where 99% of the people in the world get it wrong, but you as entrepreneurs get it right, is that they spend more money on things they want and they get upside down and they can't get out of a hole. So 2 of those values are retail values for things you want and things you need. The next type of values in the economic system is where 90.99% of the money flows, and it's what are called wholesale values. Wholesale values, the first type of wholesale value is what's called component value. You guys buy labor, you buy COGS, cost of goods sold, pieces and parts. You aggregate those together, which increases the value, components, and then you sell that component, that aggregated component value to somebody else, and it comes back to you with more. So DHL buys labor, it buys CapEx, trucks, it buys computer systems, it buys all these things, it aggregates them, it then sells them to the outside world at a price greater than it costs them to aggregate. That's component value. Most businesses are in the business of selling component value to somebody else, who then takes that and then aggregates it with something else and creates more component value. And then the second type is what's called investment value. Okay, investment value is you put it into a real estate holding, or you put it into a market, or you buy something that appreciates and the money comes back to you with more money. So wholesale value, you put the money out, it comes back with more. Okay, so those top 4 are really where all of us are playing right now. We're all engaged in consumerism, but as entrepreneurs, we are consumers not of junk and stuff. We are consumers of wholesale value. That's what separates a typical consumer from an entrepreneur. Entrepreneurs consume wholesale value, and consumers just buy stuff. Now, the question is, if you don't have any money, how do you get onto this ladder so that you can start effectively playing in that sphere of wholesale value? Well, that's where you come into 6 types of values that are accessible to all of us, okay? The middle 2 of those are knowledge. In other words, we go to school, we get on-the-job training, we read books, we do these types of things. We develop knowledge and skills. We then can sell that knowledge, those skills, into the marketplace, and people will give us money for them. And the second one is our network. Over the course of years, we build relationships, calls like this. You guys are developing a network, you're building relationships. You can leverage this network at some point to build additional value and get money. But there's 4 others that most miss, and these are the ones that I was starting to talk about at the first of the call. The first are our gifts and our leanings. We all know at some point that we sort of were good at something, to make it very simple, okay? And those first two are gifts. You have a suite of gifts that are unique to you, and you are the only person in the world that has those gifts. You are one of a kind. You are precious. You know, it's the old Southern Baptist comment. God doesn't make junk. If you question your worth or your value, don't, because that's your calling and your leaning. What happens is it gets drummed out of us when we're 2 to 3 years old, and we spend the rest of our life going back and trying to figure out what it is. The last two of those 6 are your character, which is your conduct, and whatever your purpose is. Your character is that over the course of time, you take certain actions and you collectively build a character that people go, look, I really want to call Tony. He's a great guy. I believe in him. He's amazing. I'd like to have Tony help me do this. Those 6 values are accessible to everybody. Okay. And so as long as we understand what those are, we build those. So Jeff, those 6 values, you could sit there and do leadership training and teach people's knowledge and network all day long until you turn blue in the face. But here's the problem. And I put out a post yesterday and threw together a quick visual of a fruit tree. Okay. This gets back to the formula of wealth equals value times leverage. It gets back to the clock, which is most people and most entrepreneurs, for that fact, have one customer. It's called their employer, or it's called their business if they can't leave it. Gets back to the T part on the sense model. In the tree, I put 3 bands. So most people spend their time in the knowledge and network piece. It's your CV, it's what you know, it's what you went to college for, it's whatever. And what you do is you sell that to your employer. The problem is you only have one customer at that point, so your leverage is very low. So what you're doing is you're selling your value to people you know. The second band out from that is that people you know are telling people you don't know about your value. So you're a little bit further out on the tree. And on the last part of the tree, people you don't know are telling other people you don't know about you. Okay, so you guys didn't know me before this call. Jeff and I connected on LinkedIn. Tony and I've chatted before, but you don't know who I am. Okay, I'm providing you value. So now somebody that I know told somebody I don't know in that second band about me, you guys. So that's just a quick visual. So Jeff, when you work with leaders, understand that we have to go beyond the knowledge and the network piece of it and a bunch of leadership skill components. Okay, about creating vision and supporting them and build. We have to go beyond that, and we have to then pull out the first and second and the fifth and sixth values and impart to them. There's a parable called the sower, okay? And the sower goes along and he throws a bunch of seed out. Some of it lands on dry ground and birds take it away, and some of it is in the sun and it gets baked, and some of it gets into the weeds and it gets choked out, which is the cares of the world. Some of it lands in good soil and gets watered, and it essentially grows 60 and 100 times. That's where values 1, 2, 5, and 6 come into play. It's building those things in somebody that has a vision, that was called to do leadership, okay? And in doing that, the knowledge of the network piece sort of flow along with it by extension. The impact, the leverage that those leaders, Jeff, will have when we dig in and begin to understand how are you made, what are you good at, you know, what did you like to do as a kid, those kind of things, and then operate within those gifts and help, this is discernment, build those gifts up. That person will go so much further from a leadership position than they would if we were just say, here's a bunch of leadership skills and I'm going to introduce you to people, you know, all across the world. You with me? Because what happens is if they're not operating, gets back to the clock model. If I tell you to go buy the E-Myth and you're not a systems person, you may be telling that person to do something that wasn't within their gifting, and they're going to fail. And then as a trainer of leaders, you're going to think that you're a failure. You're not a failure. What you were doing is you're trying to slam a square peg into a round hole. You can't do that. So you've got to have discernment. And first and foremost, you need to understand how somebody was created and what their gift and their leanings are, and then work within those in order to allow them to operate and help them rediscover those. And once they do, whatever they do will be like, as we say in the South, warm honey on a biscuit. It'll just flow. Okay. But to essentially pigeonhole people and go, here's the 5 steps for becoming a leader, what you're going to do is you're going to wake up one day with a lot of failures and you go, I just wasn't called to do this. Right? It's not that. You just weren't operating within the systems that were designed for you to operate within. Okay? And not everyone they could be a leader of, I understand leadership's a pretty broad topic. Some people weren't called to lead 100 people. Part of your leadership training may be, look, Bill, I know you want to be a leader, but I'm going to work with you really hard so that you can lead a team of 1. I'm going to teach you how to lead yourself first, how to build trust, how to be accountable, how to do all these types of things. He was faithful a little, okay, then you'll get a lot, okay? And so I'll close with this. I don't know how much time do you have, Tony? Do you have a hard stop at 9 o'clock?
So your turn time 9 o'clock. Normally we finish in an hour, but those who are around and they've got some time, if there are any discussions, we normally sort of hang around a bit, but we sort of focus on closing on the hour, and then sometimes we do run over. So I think just go ahead. Those guys who have to drop off, if you need to drop off, well, you've got another 7 minutes, but if you've got to drop off, then wave and drop off.
Okay. So I'll share something with you, which when I started what is now my parent company 26 years ago, I established 2 rubrics, 2 things that were non-negotiable for me and that I talk about every single meeting we've had for 26 years. And we hire and fire based on these components. So there's 2 bedrocks in our business that we use. The first is this concept of trust. So in your life, you probably go, I trust Tony, or I trust Jeff, or I trust Lee, or I trust Robert. But we don't understand what we mean when we say that, because trust is a measurable thing. And so when we promote somebody because we like them and because they did a good job where they are, and because we think we trust them, we're making a pretty big mistake if they're not equipped yet to do the job. Okay, so trust is measurable. So I'll tell a quick little story. So I was called in to do some leadership training with a board of directors for a large architectural firm. All of the board members were sitting around the table. There was a young vice president there, actually looked, Jeff, a lot like you. Great guy, man of faith, athlete. And so I said, Bill, let me ask you a question. Do you trust your wife? And I happen to know, okay? And he goes, absolutely, I trust my wife. And she's a precious thing, okay? I said, well, let me ask you a second question. Do you trust your wife? And he said, I just told you, I do trust my wife. I said, okay, fine. Let me ask you a third question. Do you trust your wife? And now he's upset. Guys around the table or the gals were snickering, and I said, I'm gonna let you off the hook for a second, but let me ask you a question. So you're an athlete. Tomorrow morning you're out running, you come up to the bottom of your driveway, you take a wrong step and you blow your ACL out. And you crawl up the driveway, you bang on the back door, your wife opens the door. Let me ask you a question. Are you going to ask your wife to help you up onto the kitchen table, take out the sharpest drawer in the sharpest knife in the drawer, and do ACL surgery on you? Because of course not. I said, why? He said, because she's not a surgeon. I said, so in other words, you're telling me you don't trust her to do surgery? And he stopped. Okay. I understand that trust is situational. We're all trustworthy in certain areas, and we're all unworthy of trust in certain areas. I'm very untrustworthy in certain areas of my life, but trust is formulaic. And this is what they wanted to talk about in the board meeting of how do we build more trust with our customers. We just want them to trust us more so that they'll give us more business. Trust is made up of 2 things. One is integrity. Now, I have multiple law firms that work for me. They're really, really good at what they do. I would never bring these guys home and have dinner with them at my house. They're just not, they're not my kind of people, but I trust them implicitly to handle my legal affairs. I don't have a bias about what they do, but integrity is you just do, the basic definition is you do what you say you will do. That's integrity. The addition between that and the next component, which is ability. Does that person have the ability to do what they say they'll do? If somebody ever said, hey, I'll meet you at 4 o'clock for dinner, and they don't show up, you feel slighted at that point, okay? And you're like, and then if it happens a second time, you're like, I just don't believe he's going to show up at 4 o'clock. Did he have the ability to show up at 4 o'clock? Yes. Did he live up to what he said he was going to do? No. So if you've ever made a New Year's resolution and on January 1st said, well, I'm going to lose weight, I'm going to stop this, I'm going to start this, I'm going to do whatever, and it lasted 2 to 3 weeks, I want you guys to hear me very closely on what I'm getting ready to tell you. Trust is integrity plus ability. That's it. Simply put, it doesn't get any more complicated than that. If you've ever made a New Year's resolution and you broke it, you didn't do what you said you were going to do for whatever reason, you broke trust with the single most important person in your life. You now no longer trust yourself. And when you don't trust yourself, by design, humans won't accept that. By design, you no longer trust other people. So you have to be very candid in your own life about all the promises you've made yourself. Take out a piece of paper, write down everything you've ever said you were going to do, ever. And look at it and go, I'm going to let myself off the hook. I said I was going to do it. I didn't do it, but I'm going to reconcile with my own self right now that I'm letting myself off the hook. And then to the best of your ability, the next time you make yourself a promise to do something, try to do it. And if you don't, you then do at least acknowledge and put it on the list that, okay, I wasn't able to pull that off. But if you can reconcile in your own mind, there's a verse that says, hey, before you take the speck out of your brother's eye, take the log out of your own. It's like if you put a pencil up to your eye, you can't see the pencil because it's so close. If you've broken trust with yourself, you cannot see that you've broken trust with yourself, but yet you're constantly micromanaging your people, and you're constantly worried about what somebody else's agenda is in your business. Why? It's not their fault. It's your fault because you don't trust yourself. So that's the first component that we work on day in and day out with all of our people. Okay. The second is accountability. So all of the people in your business have responsibilities. It's the things, the task in their role that they were called to do. You do this, 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 and this. But back in the day before, when we had just a few employees, I would interview everybody and say, can you tell me what responsibility means? And they go, well, it's the stuff I'm supposed to do. Absolutely. Can you tell me what accountability means? And they would always tell me, well, it's the stuff I'm supposed to do. No, it's different. There's a word that separates responsibility and accountability, and that word is culpability. C-U-L-P-A-B-I-L-I-T-Y. Culpability means blame-worthy. Okay? Accountability is you put your toe on the line and you take ownership for whatever the result is, good, bad, or indifferent. That's accountability every single time. I messed up. I'm going to course correct. You were accountable. Okay? If you make excuses every time something goes wrong, if you essentially are blaming and complaining about everything around you, you're not being accountable. You've got to take ownership. The first step in leadership and business ownership is you have to take ownership. If something goes wrong, it's not the economy's fault. It's your fault. If an employee makes a mistake in front of a customer, you don't call the customer and go, well, this employee's, you protect and insulate him. You're the pointy end of the business sphere. Take ownership. That's accountability. Okay. Now, in a business, Jeff, this gets back to the leadership component. Okay. When you're in leadership and you have responsible charge, the accountability formula, if you're a line person, you're working in the field, you have a driver, and you want to teach that person to be accountable, take ownership. He gets to take ownership for all the good stuff that happens. He gets to take ownership for all the bad stuff that happens. But his manager only can take ownership for the bad stuff. If anything good happens in that manager or that leader's charge, that leader only gets to take ownership for the bad stuff. He gives all of the credit for the good stuff to the people down the line. He never gets to take credit for the good stuff. Never. That's accountability. So those two principles, and we're over by a minute, that drives my life. It drives my business life. They're simple rubrics that you can use. Put them on trust, integrity plus ability, and accountability. If you think about these every single day, if you just work on these two, I will guarantee you that all the other things that I've talked about will fall into alignment. They'll all fall into alignment. You don't need to know the models. Your job is to build trust with your employees, with your marketplace, which is, I'll do this, I've got the ability to do this, and you do it consistently over time. And when you do it consistently over time, you build trust. The single largest tax on your business and in an economy, and in the United States economy. I mean, our president lies. I mean, how do we know if the president's lying? His mouth is moving. Okay. That we don't trust. It's the single largest excise tax on every business and every life there is a breakdown of trust. And if you can get that firmly fixed in your mind, I commit to being trustworthy in my own life and in the life of my business. It's not going to be easy. It's hard. It takes time to build those muscles. But if you do that, I will guarantee you that 12 months from today, you will be a completely different company and a completely different individual. Guaranteed. So there you go.
Thank you. We are on time. Guys, those of you who need to drop off.
That was awesome.
You.
That was awesome.
That really was. I do see somebody joined us right near the end there. I think they've popped off again. Didn't know anybody. Any questions from anybody for Mark?
Mark, we've always preached that you never take credit for the good. I really like what you said. I used to run a factory with a lot of people, and if something goes bad, it's your fault.
Yep.
I don't expect to answer. I just wish your president would do the same thing that you spoke about just now, but that's all I'm saying.
No, it's sad, but the problem is that it gets back to, and I wasn't doing that as a pot shot to the president. I'm just using it from an exemplary, as an example. I'm very cautious about pointing out somebody else's faults on that front from a trustworthiness standpoint, because I still have, after 40 some odd years of being in business, I still have light years to go. It's a mountain that I'll never reach the top of. There's always room for improvement. That's the very definition of grace. But it's an ideal that we can choose, that we can work toward, that will make us better leaders, better business owners, better spouses, whatever the answer is. It's just a great model. So, yes.
Mark, I just want to thank you for that. Was actually awesome. That was actually quite a blessing, and it's for somebody that's actually dealing with a little bit of depression that actually lifted my spirits completely today. So I just say thank you.
Entirely my pleasure. And what we find is that a lot of what we call depression, okay, and a lot of what we attribute because of marketing by pharmaceutical companies to depression is a breakdown in self-trust, self-image, and self-esteem. Self-image of how we see ourselves, self-esteem about how we feel about ourselves. You with me? And the reason we feel this way and we don't understand, and then we medicate it, we go to counselors, we go to psychiatrists, we then sit there and try to peel. It's the old joke about the onion that went to the psychiatrist and they started peeling back the layers and all they were left with was tears. Understand that the reason that they feel that way is because they refuse to take ownership for things in their own life. Okay. And if it goes too far, then we've got a problem. Okay. And so I've worked with a lot of people that have, and it's very difficult. You know, you have to, this is why CBT, cognitive behavior therapy, has been so valuable, is that it gets you to a point where you can start asking questions and allow that person to ask questions of himself to sort of dig into those challenges. But that is the ultimate breakdown. Okay. In fact, years ago, if you've ever, there's a book that actually speaks to this. If you've ever read David Allen's book, Getting Things Done, that GTD system of getting things done. If you go back in the third section of David's book, he actually speaks to this point of the reason we've made so many commitments. It's like if you look around yourself right now, you'll see something that oh yeah, I need to take out the garbage. Oh yeah, I need to change that light bulb. Oh yeah, I need to do this. The value of GTD, and David didn't even realize this, is that what it does is it creates a workflow system where you get everything out of your head, onto a piece of paper. And if you have an airtight system that you trust in your environment, it frees up all this psychic RAM. And all of a sudden, all of these things, this ambient angst that you felt, even if you're not clinically depressed, will evaporate. Okay? Because now what you're doing is you're coming face to face with commitments, big, little, small, in the middle, that you've made to yourself. It's not just stop smoking, lose weight, you know, read the Bible more. It's not that. It's, oh yeah, I need to change the batteries in my flashlight that's in my kitchen. It's that small. And so because we interact and look for patterns in our environment, we literally are going out every time we walk down the hall, we're seeing things that are triggers for us that oh yeah, I need to do that. Oh yeah, I need to. And your brain is not a filing cabinet. And so what you're trying to do is you're trying to, if you've ever gone to the grocery store and come home and you're like, oh darn, I knew I needed to get milk. I can't remember anything. My memory sucks. It's not that at all. It's that you don't have a workflow system and a vector into life to actually manage all of the input that's coming into your life every single day. Right. And if that gets overwhelming and it's not addressed and taken care of, the downstream effect of that is depression. You don't want to get out of bed. You veg out, chip on the couch. You're watching Netflix all night. You're playing video games till 3 a.m. In other words, what that does is you're looking for a way to anesthetize that sense of uneasiness that you feel because you haven't taken control of your environment to do the things you were supposed to do. It's that simple.
Thanks for that.
Does that make sense?
Makes sense. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, my pleasure. And so one more thing, if you know somebody that deals with that stuff, Newton's second or third law, objects in motion tend to what?
Tend to look bigger.
Objects at rest tend to what?
Remain at rest.
Right? It's the concept, it's the physics mental models of inertia and momentum. Our lives are the same way. When a person's depressed, you have to get that person to commit to doing one small thing. It's not like go take more medicine, go to a psychiatrist, whatever. Hey, if you're not getting exercise, all I want you to do is walk to the mailbox and walk back to the house. Well, I could go a half a mile. No, I want you to walk to the mailbox and walk back. Tomorrow, I want you to walk to the mailbox in one step and walk back. Once they start doing little small things, the brain then triggers that it's actually developing a discipline, a muscle. And by doing those little small things, you're now breaking inertia. You're starting the process of building momentum. And once that momentum's going, it's like a flywheel. All you have to do is keep it going. That person has to act their way out of that state. And they don't do that by doing some grandiose thing, by going to some retreat and sitting there and playing with beads. And I mean, you don't need to do that. You just need to do one little small thing that's almost nonsensical and do it on a repeated basis. And if you do that over the course of a week, 2 weeks, 2 months, a year, that person will look back and go, how could I ever have been in that place? Why? Mm-hmm. Because they've now started to build that momentum, break inertia, and start to mentally get to a point where they feel their self-esteem comes up, their self-image comes up, and they'll break that cycle. Does that make sense?
Yep, that's very good. Thanks, Mark.
Little small steps. Okay. So.
Jeff, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Mark, thank you very much for the nuggets. I've just got one question around the clock model. Yep. So I need to look at my team. Do I get like an assessment so that I know who is who within my team? Are they the 12 o'clock, the 9 o'clock, the 3 o'clock? How do I get to know that in my team somebody's at 12 o'clock or somebody is a 9 o'clock?
My sense, Jeff, is that you have discernment.
Okay.
There's not a model out there that, I mean, again, this is my own mental model that I created. So there's no assessment they take that says they're 12s. You could go take something like Strength Finders if you wanted. It would give you a little bit of, because that's different than any of the other assessments out there. The Strength Finders test will sort of tell you a little bit, okay? But the only way, there's a 4-letter process that you can engage in with those guys to get a better sense for what they do, and it's called TIME. you got to go spend time with them, Jeff.
Mm. Mm.
Okay? You need
Yeah.
to talk to them. You need to
Mm.
ask them questions. Don't worry about telling them anything. Ask them questions. What did you do as a kid? Your job as a leader is not to go offload your responsibility of building more leaders and replacing yourself to some assessment that's to give you a shortcut and immediate gratification to giving you an answer. Your job as a leader is to understand your people, okay? And to essentially invest in them, pray for discernment, and understand what their gifting was. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
If you think
Very
about
much.
Bezalel, the guy that I mentioned that was like the master craftsman of the tabernacle, his father was probably a farmer. Do you think that his farmer father wanted him to be a farmer? Absolutely. But he had enough discernment when that kid started playing with metal and rocks and dirt that he understood that he wasn't going to be a farmer, much to his chagrin, because he wanted somebody to take care of the farm when he grew up. That was what they did. And what he did is he sent him off to work with a mentor who knew something about craftsmanship. Make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Spend time with your people. Listen to them. Understand what they're doing. Help them break errant mental models. Understand what they're gifted at. Don't try to script what they should be. Work with what you have. It's a lump of clay that takes time to work and put on the wheel and to essentially craft to become whatever that piece of clay was designed to be, whether it's a plate, cup, saucer, or a pitcher. That's your job as a leader. You don't, the assessments that have come out, starting with what color is your parachute over the course of the last 20 years, as leaders, we think we should be giving everybody in our company an assessment. Do what, if you're a leader, which I think you are, and if you were
Yes.
called to be leaders, then do what you were gifted to do. And don't rely on something to give you a shortcut.
Mm.
That would be my, make sense?
Thank you very much. It certainly does. Thank you. Thank you, Mark.
I'm giving you permission to be who you were created to be. Now, your job is to not use tools that offload that responsibility onto an assessment that helps you understand whether somebody was creative and imaginative, whether they're a people person, whether they're a systems builder, or whether they're an operations person. Create vignettes, opportunities where everybody has to come together to work, and then sit back and watch and see which ones are coming up with ideas, which one are the life of the party and bringing everybody around, which ones are sitting there going, would you guys just stop? And I mean, we got to get stuff done and quit talking about everything. Let's just go make things happen. Or the person that's sitting there figuring, well, if we did this and we did this, we could get it done faster. That's the kind of things you're looking for. Okay?
Thank you.
What other questions do you guys have?
I don't have a question. I have two comments. Actually, my first one is a question. When you were talking about the personality tests, I missed it. Did you say they're a fraud? Or what did you say?
Yeah, my personal opinion is that there's very little value to taking any of those kind of tests. And here's why I would say that.
Mm-hmm.
In psychology, there's a concept called the theory of narrative identity. Okay? It essentially says that your identity is based on a story that you tell yourself. Who you are today is a function of a reconstructed past, because the things that happened with your mom and your dad and when you were growing up and that kind of thing, you've essentially told yourself a story, you know, regarding education or whatever over the course of years. So you have a reconstructed past and you have a certain set of perceptions about your current present and then who you think you might become in the future. And those three things all come together to create this story arc, this narrative that define who you are as a person. You go, I am this and I am this. And in other words, that narrative may or may not be true. Okay. Yeah. When you take a personality test, you're answering questions on the fly in rapid succession, and your brain's going, when you read it on the paper, you're going into your brain, and your brain is feeding back to you the narrative of who you think you are in the present. And you're answering those questions based on who you currently are. So from a personality standpoint, it then comes back and it says you are this, 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 and this. And then what happens is you feel that you found the Holy Grail, and then you go and you tell everybody, hey, I'm this kind of person and I do this and this, and you take ownership for it. And then you repeat that your identity now is locked in place based on what you answered on that report. And you said, well, I'm an input guy and I'm a strategic guy and I'm a helper, whatever that is. But understand that you are who you want to become. You have this, you're not an archaeologist. Your job is not to go figure out who you are. Your job is to go architect and create who you want to become.
Yeah.
So your future, now I personally look at things through a lens of, I'm a Christian, so I just look through things through that lens. You may look through them through a different lens, but I'm given a model of who I can become. So what I'm doing is I'm operating in the present through a future vision of who I want to become. And my actions today are in alignment with that. So if you're a runner, let's say you're not a runner, and today you go run a quarter of a mile, and then tomorrow you run another quarter of a mile, and then you work up to a half mile. By the end of 30 days, when somebody says, who am I? Who are you? You can go, well, I'm a runner. Why? Because you're running. That's it.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense.
My encouragement to you would be is that we've almost treated personality tests like a cult, because we want answers to try to figure out who in the heck we are. But the reality of it is you can define who you want to become. And so we create things in two ways. We create things in the accretive and the subtractive. What that essentially means is you can essentially say, look, this is who I want to become. What does this type of person do
to become that?
And then go do it. Okay. In other words, you can then say, this person that I want to become, which is a CEO, makes X amount of money, whatever the case is, every single day, they don't spend time watching Netflix. They spend time doing this. And if you do that for X number of days, then you can, even if you haven't realized that end result, you're investing in process, not in end results. And so my encouragement to you would be, don't worry about the past, because the past is nothing more than a couple of connections in your head, wiring in your brain. It's not who you are. Okay. And what's happening in your present is you're just perceiving what's happening in your present. You can define who you want to become. Jeff, this is what you do. A leader has to decide, this is who I want to become. Robert, if you want to be able to leave your business for 6 months and go on sabbatical and come back and the business be bigger, you can do that. This is what I want. And then you back up from that and you figure a path. So I'll share one last thing with you along this line. So in psychology, there's a concept called the expectancy theory of motivation. Okay. It's a Venn diagram with 3 circles. In the first circle at the top is you have to have a clear, compelling goal. So what is your future self going to look like? It has to be clear. It has to be compelling. It has to be something that you want to invest time in. It has to excite you. This is all the goal setting stuff. You have to have a clear, compelling goal. The second is you have to have at least some sense of what I call A to B. In other words, you have to, where you are today and is A, and where you want to get to, which is your clear, compelling goal, is B. You have to have some sense of what the path looks like. You don't have to have it all figured out, but you at least have to have a sense of what the path is to get from A to B. And the last is you have to have agency, which means you have to believe that you can walk the path to get to that clear, compelling goal. When those 3 things come into alignment with each other, you now have internal motivation to become that future self. Now, while this isn't in the psychology model of expectancy theory of motivation, as a believer, I put another word in the middle of that Venn diagram, and it's called hope. Hope is in the middle of that Venn diagram. Faith is, I believe I can walk the path from A to B. Wisdom, understanding, and knowledge are also tied into the path from A to B. I have a picture of who I want to become in the future, which is that I now have agency. I know that if I do this take this first step, I can take the second. When those 3 things come into alignment, you now have motivation, and the personality test doesn't mean anything. Because you're not defining yourself by a personality test. You're defining yourself by a clear, compelling goal of who you want to become in the future. And then what happens is when this group gets together, you get together and go, this is who I want to become. Will you help me? Will you hold me accountable? Will you give me the tools? Will you allow me to talk about who I want to become? will you help foster in community this hope that I have that I can become this person where I want to build between now and December 31st of 2024, I want to build 100 vibrant new leaders or 500 new vibrant leaders in Africa that are going to take the world by storm. I believe that I have been called to change the face of this continent through leadership. And I'm going to pick an arbitrary number. It's a clear, compelling goal. You put the number up on the wall and go 500 leaders. I've got X amount of time to get there. Then you back up from there and go, what do I have to do today to get to those 500? That's the path from A to B. I believe I can do it because that's who I was called to be. And when you do that and you get people around you, in the middle of that is hope. And you build community, and that hope essentially says, we're going to build 500 vibrant leaders by 2024. End of story. You can't talk me out of it. This is what we're doing. Now you're being visionary in your leadership. Then you're pulling in your operations people, your magnification people, your systems people. You're bringing all these people together, and you're now executing on this vision that you've architected for yourself into the future. Make sense?
Yes.
Makes sense. Thank you. My last one is I'm really glad I actually got some time to come to this because I'm very young in my entrepreneurial journey, maybe a few months in, but it's perfect because exactly where I caught on is exactly what I needed to hear as a young someone who's starting out. Because if I work on being trustworthy, not only in my life, but in my work, then everything else will flow. I'm having a lot of conversations. I'm going into the nonprofit world, and I'm having a lot of conversations where they've seen a lot of leaders who come in with a passion to help, but over the years they get misguided, or maybe the ego grows, and so their passion starts to die off. And one of my greatest goal is to actually just be trustworthy in everything that I do. So thank you. This was really good.
Let me share one more model with you that'll help you since you're starting out on your journey. Okay.
Perfect. Yes.
So I'm going to do an open-ended question. What is the purpose of your business? Again, not the big picture esoteric serve the community, but if you're a business owner, in its most basic term, what is that business intended to do for you individually? It's to make you what? You're creating value in an economic system. That business is designed to create what for you? Profit, money. That's it. Okay. I'm not trying to sound mercantile. Yes, you can have a bigger picture thing, but if that business isn't making money, you don't have a business. End of story.
Yeah.
You with me?
Yes.
So I'm going to share a model with you, which I call the power of zero. Okay.
Okay.
So I'm going to put you on the spot right now, and it's not meant to be negative or any, but I'm going to ask you a question.
Okay.
Do you have a personal private investment account, like a money market account that you personally have right now?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Second question. This month, June, is your business doing enough that you can put out of that business $100 this month into that account?
No.
Okay. So your first step is you need to figure out how to put $100 into that account this month. Between now and the end of the month, I want $100 in that account. Yes. Go figure it out. You got to go sell things on the side of the road. I'm being facetious, but if you've got to go mow somebody's grass, if you've got to go do something and ask somebody to buy something from you, if you need to sell your time or whatever, you need to figure out how to create $100 extra that you go put into that account this month. Commit to me that you'll put $100 in there. Figure it out. Can you do that?
I can do that.
What you need to do now is you need to do that, and you have to say, Mark, I'm going to commit to you that every single month I'm going to put $100 into my investment account. I'm not going to touch it. I'm not going to do anything with it. I'm just going to put it in there. Here's why I say that. Because the minute you put $100 in there, I will guarantee you that you will look in the mirror and go, good girl, you did what you were supposed to do. Your self-esteem will go up, your self-image will go up, and you're like, this business effort that I'm engaged in right now created surplus for me that allows me to have a better future. I put $100 back. Continue to build your business. As soon as you can, I want you to put $200 back every month.
Mm-hmm.
400, 800, 1,600, 3,200, 6,400, 12,800, 25,600. Got it? 52.2. $104,000 a month. Your goal, I want you to write all these out. I want you to put them on the wall. All of you guys do this. If you each are in a different place. If you can't put $100 back, go figure out how to take it. Robert, you can take $100 out of your business this month and put it back. You can do 100, put 2. I mean, whatever it is, go put it in a sacred account.
Okay.
Now, why do I say to do this? This isn't about being mercantile or whatever. The purpose of a business is to serve you. The purpose is to serve you financially so that you can build and grow assets that at some point are throwing off cash so that you can go do other things that are a part of your purpose. Serve other ladies, go help build other companies, serve your community. But you need assets in order to do that. You need machine systems that are throwing off cash that are net free cash flow every month. It gets back to the sense model. You need to build things that are doing, from a time standpoint, doing the work for you. This simple little model forces creativity. It forces innovation. It forces everything that we've talked about. You have to wake up in the morning and go, how can I this week create more value for the marketplace? And what you will find is that at a certain point in a very short order, you can't work any harder. You can't sell any more of whatever you've got to sell. You have to do things differently. You have to build partnerships. You have to build other components. You have to buy another company. You have to do something to create the value or create more value for the world that you're in. That's your job as an entrepreneur, create value for people. And so this simple little rubric, I'm not at the end of the scale yet, but I'm pretty darn close. I started, can I put 100? And you'd be surprised. I mentor CEOs at companies that are doing $20, $30 million a year. I asked them this question. You would be shocked at how many CEOs can't put $200 a month back. And I'm like, something is seriously wrong with this picture. Don't you understand this? If you can't put $200 back into an account, or 400, 800, 1,600, don't worry about what to do with the money right now. When you get to a point where you've got $500,000, whatever denomination you've got in the bank, you call Tony and then you call me, and then we'll figure out what to do with your $500,000. Your job right now is to build a war chest that you can then use as an invest. The purpose of money is to make more money, not to go spend it junk. That's the purpose of money in an economic system, is to go make money. This isn't about being money grabbing or whatever. This is about, you just understand the systems and how they work. You've got to create value in excess of what it costs you to create the value. And when you do, you have excess. And this system forces you to be so innovative and control your costs to the point where you can start putting it back every month. What will happen to your self-confidence? What will happen to your self-esteem? What will happen? People around you will see you and they'll go, something is different about this person. They won't know what it is. You'll know what it is. And it's not that you've got $500,000 or $1 million of whatever you've got in your account. That's not the point. The point is you're building a machine that is creating more value than it's costing you to create it. And you're doing what it's designed to do, which is to take care of yourself. Follow that, build up on that model of 100, 200, 400, 800, 1,600, 32, 64, 12, 8, 25, 6, 52, 4, 104. And the minute you get to the last level on there, you're now putting $1 million, whatever your denomination is, in the bank every single year. What would your life look like if you did that? Would it look differently? Yes.
It would look so different.
It would look so
different.
Because right now you can't see past the infrared waves in front of you. You're like, how do I take care of this bill? And what do I do? And I don't know how I'm going to handle this. And what happens, you're so focused on the obstacles. Marcus Aurelius in Meditation said, the obstacle is the way. If you've got a problem, if you don't have enough money, you can sit down and say, I don't have enough money and woe is me. Or you can do what God gifted you to do, which is to go create value and so big and so wide that, and trade it in the marketplace, that you no longer have those. You'll have a different set of problems. Trust me. I can tell you, I've got a different set of problems than when I was dealing with that set of problems. But if you follow this and make this your one model, how can I get $100 this month? How can I get 200 this month? What other products do I need to have? What more services do I need to have? Who can I network with? You know, Gary, you can go out and, you know, Gary, you and I could sit down for 5 minutes and come up with 20 things that would increase your revenue. You with me? You can move from a one night, I call it a one night stand model, which is derogatory, I apologize, to an MRR, monthly recurring revenue model. You can work with other companies. You may have a specific asset or capability that others don't have, and you could charge them a monthly rate. And in one fell swoop, one person says, hey, I'll do this for $1,200 a month. All of a sudden you're on the scale, and then you don't go spend that money. You don't have to pour it back into something. The thought is you have to take your own money and pour it back into your business to grow to your business. No, what you need to use is the 6 inches between your ears to create more value. And when you do, you take that $1,200, go put it in your account, then go figure out how to replicate that. Makes sense? This is what we as entrepreneurs do. Regardless of where you're on the clock, each one of those has a different set of gifts and skills to do what I just said. You don't have to be the 12 o'clock person. You can go be an operations person. You can be a systems builder. You can be a people, whatever. But there are ways to create power. This gets back to the whole concept of a personality test. You just have to decide what that looks like for you. Even if it's not right, even if you don't know all the steps, put that as your future vision. Use this Power Zero model, decide what you're doing, and go get on the ladder. Start putting the money back. When you get to a point where you've developed the discipline and the accountability to pay yourself first and get that investment money put back, you won't really have to worry about what you do with it because you've honed a set of skills and disciplines that will pay off for the rest of your life. And then, Jeff, you can go, look, this is how I did it. No, this isn't going to happen by August. This may not happen by August 2024. You have to pay the price. You have to move past, you have to invest in process, pay the price, and at some point that price will pay off. That's leadership. And so back to this leadership discussion, this is what we're talking about on this Power of Zero. If you're just new into the entrepreneurial business, your job, you were gifted with a certain set of abilities to, I know we're way over, but let me tell you a quick story. So in the United States, we've got offices in San Diego, California. It's absolutely beautiful. It's Southern California, you know, water, beaches, whatever. And I was out there meeting with my head of service, and we were getting low on work. Okay. And his name is Kyle, and he's no longer with us, but Kyle's like, Mr. Oakes, you've got to go sell more work. We're almost out of work. I'm going to lose my job. All he could think about was, I have a job. I said, Kyle, all you have to do is go to our existing clients and say, what can I help you with? What problem do you have? And say, I can help you solve the problem. He said, well, I don't know how to do that. Just knock on the door, go to the Navy, go to the Marine Corps, go to somebody, knock on the door and go, look, is there anything you haven't been able to find a contractor for? We'll help you with it. Oh, I don't want to do that. That's our salesman's job. He said, but I don't know how to do it. So I said, let me show you how. So it was just turning evening, and in Southern California, it gets cool at night and it's warm during the day. And at the restaurant that Brenda, my wife, and I were with, taking him out to dinner, they were wheeling out these big propane heaters. You've probably seen them that, you know, they have a propane tank and they turn them on and the heat comes down, right? Well, as they were wheeling them out, the wheels were screeching so bad, they were like chalk on a chalkboard. Okay, so I had a waiter come over. I said, hey, how are you doing? He goes, fine. I said, look, did you notice all of your clients here that they were covering their ears when you guys wheeled these things out? I mean, you really are, you're creating you're creating an ambiance that is just, it's going to have a tone on your whole meal. I tell you what, would you go to the manager right now and tell him there's a guy out there with a can of WD-40, a lubricant, and for $25, I'll real quickly run around and I'll spray all of these things and take the squeak out of it. He said, sure. He runs off. The guy comes out, the manager comes out with $25. Says, here's your $25. I said, I want to apologize. I don't have WD-40. I just was making an object lesson. He goes, no, you're absolutely correct. I've been looking at this thing, you know, thinking about this for the last 2 months, back to my whole point of it's occupying his brain, right? He said, but I tell you what, because you reminded me, I'm going to comp you a dessert. I'm going to comp you an appetizer, which was $25.
So I got a free just by coming up with an idea. And Brenda, my wife, is there like, oh, I've got another one. You need to replace all the lights. She was being funny. You know, there were a bunch they had these Christmas tree lights, and there was like a half dozen of them out. And she was like, well, I can replace the lights. Do I get a second appetizer? No. But here's my point. I created $25 out of thin air in 120 seconds. Out of thin air. You hear what I'm saying?
Yes.
As you're driving down the road today, as you're looking around you, the one thing that an entrepreneur, regardless of where you're on the clock, needs to be looking, you need to look. You drive down the road and you see trash on the side of the road, there's money. If you see a bench that is peeling because the paint's coming off, there's money. Everywhere you look is money. It's just hanging off of trees and lampposts and whatever. You've got to develop that mindset that everywhere you look, there's money. You with me? So I'll give you an example. So she asked, how do I do this? I'm just getting in. How do I handle this thing? Understand that when she shared that problem with you guys, there was money hanging below it. I mean, it's just hanging. So which one of you is going to come alongside her and create an opportunity where she's going to get onto the ladder, make her $100 this month with her customer base or the people she's talking to? Which one of you is going to go in there and bombard her and say, look, tell me what the problem is. I'll help you. And I tell you what, I'll make it easy for you. I'm going to help you. And then when you make the money, I'll split it with you 90-10 or whatever. You keep the 90%, I'll keep, it's free 90% money for her, but you just made 10%. When people on this call are sitting here saying, I have this problem or tell me about this, you guys have got to get to the point where you're sitting there thinking, oh my gosh, ka-ching, 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 it's money. Not in this mercantile money grabbing mindset, but it's, oh my gosh, God created me to be able to see this kind of stuff as an entrepreneur, to understand where there's a problem. How do I go solve it? What other areas does DHL need to serve? How can I go do small things where I'm taking things farm to table? How can I go handle logistics for whatever? In other words, there's money everywhere. But what happens is you get stuck in a mindset where you think that the world back in the early 80s, and you guys won't know this most likely, but when I was in high school, the big rage was these ties like you tie around your neck that looked like a piano keyboard, okay? And there was a company called the Piano Keyboard Tie Company, and they manufactured ties that look like keyboards, okay? There were only two people that manufactured these ties. One was the Piano Key Tie Company, and the other was a little small company called Estee Lauder. Got it? The Piano Key Tie Company went out of business the minute the fad died. Estee Lauder is 10 times as big. Why? Because the Piano Key Tie Company defined itself by the product it made. What do? I'm a logistics guy. I handle shipping. No, you're not. Don't define yourself by the product or service you sell. I'm a digital marketing guy. No, I'm not. I'm trying to get qualified leads to grow my business so I can take care of my employees' guy. Estee Lauder defined itself by what the customers in that short period of time wanted, not by the product it manufactured. Whenever you see an opportunity, what you're looking for is you're looking for a problem and an innovative, creative way to solve it, like squeaky wheels on a heater. Now, you have to be careful that you don't get so disjointed that I'm using it as examples. You don't want to get so disjointed that you're like off chasing every little shiny thing around the world. That's not your point. You want to stick close to your knitting. But if you do that, you can create value with the customers. This is why you forward integrate, backward integrate, horizontally integrate. Who are my customers? What problems do those customers have? So we have a client, we maintained 780 of their sites in the United States. They sell used cars, okay? It counts millions of dollars a year. We got brought in to do maintenance on their barriers. That's what we got called in to do. What am I doing now? What problems do you have? Well, we're having a hard time managing all of our small parts inventory. Really? Tell me about it. Hey, guy, talking to my leadership team. We need to be in the inventory management business. We're now an inventory management company, not a security company. We're a security company that also does inventory management for this large company. They have car washes. We now maintain car washes. You get my point? In other words, if they have a problem, I'm going to go figure out how to solve it. Why? Because if I'm on site, I have no customer acquisition cost. I have no mobilization cost. All I'm doing is flushing straight margin down to the bottom line. Gary, you know this all too well on one-time offers and return pass and all that digital marketing stuff you guys do. You with me? You know that if I sell X, I got to go create an offer. The offer essentially covers my advertising costs. So as Dan Kennedy says, I can now spend my competitor so that I can own the customers, and then everything else is margin. This is the whole point of funnels, to use marketing speak. You with me? That's just innovation. So hopefully this helps you guys. I know I just hit you guys with a fire hose. I could probably go for hours more, so I'm sorry.
I think everybody's enjoying. I think this is the longest we've ever overshot. No,
like
no,
it's a little girl that's got the fire hose with her mouth open and how do I? So
No,
I'm
it's
on
great, Mark.
LinkedIn.
Thank you.
Gary will give you guys my contact information. I'm available to serve you guys at any point in time. If you have a question, and I'm talking individually, if you want to have one-on-one, I can serve you to be a better person. I will do that. We'll find a time and I'll serve you. Jeff, I'll come alongside you on the leadership front stuff. Any of you guys that have questions regarding business, I understand logistics, manufacturing, digital marketing. I understand all the mental models. I may not be able to dig into your systems. That's not who I am, but I can help you think through a problem. And using some of these and a bunch of other models, I can help you think through. Robert, I need you to get free of your business at some time, brother. I really do. Okay. I need you to figure out you need to set that as a goal. I know what it's like. It's tiring. There's an old game called whack-a-mole. You know, that little moles pop up and you hit them with a mallet. You get to a point, if you can't leave your business, some days you come in and you're just like, you go home and you're like, why do I do this? I mean, you feel like you're playing whack-a-mole. So I'd love to see you, Robert, get free of your business at some point in time so that you can take a deep breath and know that you've got an asset doing what you need it to do. And it's doable. You just have to set it as a goal and start the process. Okay?
Yeah, I'd love to chat through some of the detail, Mark.
Yeah, be more than happy to do that. Well, guys, I appreciate you. This has been a blessing.
Thank you so much as well.
Tony, thank you.
Thank you, Salome. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Tony, for the invite.
It's a pleasure. Salome's on Faith-Driven Entrepreneurship Program with me up in Salome. You're up in Kenya, as far as I remember,
in
right?
Nairobi. Sorry, I joined Teams, my privacy settings, so my camera couldn't work unless I dropped off the call and started a whole logging in again. So I'm sorry about that. But I would have shown you a bit of noisy Nairobi. But yes, I'm in Nairobi.
That's okay. Jeff's in, where did you say you were, Jeff? Ghana? Or?
Yes, I'm in Ghana. I'm in Accra.
Yeah, lovely place. Okay, guys, thank you very much.
I've got a passion for what you guys do, and I want to see you guys have fun and feel creative. The things that got you started with this process, there were stars in your eyes and you wanted to change the world and feel free, and understand that regardless of how many years you've been doing it, it's still very possible and very doable. Groups like this will help you get back to that point, and anything that I can do to help you along those lines, I'll certainly do it. So
You're welcome. Thank you. Bye.
All right, thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it. And I'm sure we'll have you back on again at some point in time. Maybe we can reschedule again and catch you sometime in your early
anytime I can
morning.
serve you guys, I'll be more than happy to do that and pour into your lives, and it'd be an honor to do that. So thank you.
Thanks. Guys, I'll share details on the group and within the membership and all that sort of stuff. We have got the recording that'll be made available as usual with Quinton on the membership site and all that sort of stuff, so you guys can look at that. Mark, again, we really appreciate it. We thank you very much for your time and all your wisdom, and we look forward to interacting with you again in the future. Blessings.
I look forward to it. Blessings,
all over
guys.
you. Okay.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Thank you.